Okay, it is 6 o'clock. I would like to call this meeting to order. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? The Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Play ball.
Okay, seeing as this is the GRCSU Reorganization meeting, the first item on the agenda is to nominate a board chair. I'd like to open the floor for any nominations.
I'd like to nominate Lisa.
Okay. And since we have not approved the Robert's Rules for Small Boards yet, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Do we have any other nominations? Amanda?
I'd like to nominate Eric.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any other nominations? Okay, so we have a nomination for Lisa and we have one for Eric. We will do a roll call vote. I'm going to go just down the list as I have it here. So when I call your name, please just state who you'll be voting for, please. Begin with Lisa Miser.
Lisa.
Okay. Linda.
Lisa.
Mike Moser.
Lisa.
Tina Kishwa.
Lisa.
Colin's not here. Tim Hammond.
Lisa.
Lance Jones. Okay. Amanda Whedon.
Eric.
Okay, Eric Humphrey. Okay. All right, and George.
Eric.
Okay. There, so. Okay, so by a vote of 5-4, Lisa is our chair. I'll turn the meeting over to Lisa. Thanks.
Thank you. Nominations are open for vice chair.
I'd like to nominate.
Eric.
Go ahead.
Oh, I nominate Eric.
Is there a second?
I'll second. It's Amanda.
Okay.
I'd like to nominate Tina.
And second?
I'll second that.
Any other nominations? Can we use your list again, Chris?
Yes.
I mean, I
Or do you
could,
want Chris to roll it? He can read it.
All right, do you want to just do?
Yeah, that's
Okay,
fine.
so Lisa Miser,
Tina,
Linda Smith,
I don't know people. I'm I'm an old new, so I don't know if I should vote. Maybe I should recuse
you
myself,
can abstain if you'd like.
please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, that's all right. Mike Moser,
Tina.
Tina,
Tina.
Tim Hammond,
Tina.
Lance, Amanda,
Eric.
Eric,
Myself.
okay, and George.
Eric.
Okay. So we have a 4-4 tie here with one abstention. So, I have to do a revote or? Yep. All right. We'll revote here. So once again, second vote, Lisa.
Tina.
Okay. Linda is still abstain.
I have to because that's just not fair.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you.
Mike?
Tina.
Okay. Tina?
Tina.
Okay. Tim?
Tina.
Lance?
Eric.
Amanda?
Eric.
Eric? And George?
Eric.
Okay, we once again have a 4-4 tie with one abstention.
Can you co-chair?
No.
You can't do that?
Well, it's just, it's vice
It's
chair.
vice chair.
Can you co-vice chair?
Well, we,
I mean, is there?
we have one person from each district do something. So one person is chair, one person is vice chair, and one person is clerk. So each district has a representative.
Oh, I see. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, the vice chair just basically.
Is there in case the chair is not there, right?
And the chair has COVID.
Let's hope not.
I mean, we could do another vote, but I feel it's gonna be 4-4 again, but.
I don't know. What's the pleasure of the board? Another vote?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, round 3. Lisa?
Tina.
Linda?
I'll abstain.
Mike?
Tina?
Tina?
Tina.
Tim?
Tina.
Lance?
Eric.
Amanda?
Eric.
Eric?
Tina.
And George?
Eric.
Okay, so Eric, you voted for Tina, just to be clear, okay. All right, so then by a vote of 5-3 with one abstention, Tina is our vice chair.
All right. Nominations are open for clerk.
I'll nominate Eric.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any other nominations? All right. With only one nomination, do we need to do a roll call?
I'll just do it all in favor, any
Yeah.
opposed?
All those in favor of Eric as clerk?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. So the remaining members of Rutland Town that are voting members are Tim Hammond and Colin Finnegan for,
It's just Fingan.
Finnegan, well, I'd like to make him a little more Irish. For Corey Valley, it's Mike Mosier and Linda Smith. For Ira, it's Lance.
And Jeff Barden.
Oh, you're switching off? Yeah, okay, and Jeff, sorry. And for Wellsprings, it would be George and Amanda.
Yes.
Okay. So we have to set a regular meeting schedule. As you know, when we just went through all district meetings, everyone picked a date. So we're all meeting the second week, so we'll be meeting the first week for the SU. So we could meet Tuesday or Thursday would be the choices.
Not Thursday.
Oh, Tuesday.
Correct.
Okay, Tuesday is the choice at 6 o'clock.
The first week.
Yeah, because we're meeting, all district boards are meeting the second week.
Okay, the first Tuesday of,
So that would be April 4th.
So we'd meet the first Tuesday of each month for the SU board.
okay.
The first week is open, to be honest, so whatever the board chooses.
So Wednesdays would work too?
Correct. Wednesdays would be an option if the board choose.
So Wednesday, we had members that had other meetings, so. Well, then, is Thursday an option or no?
Thursday could be an option, yes.
Okay. Not Thursday? Wednesday?
It's Tuesday or Wednesday.
All right. Is that best? Okay. So
What are we saying, Wednesdays?
we're not saying anything. We're saying, we're putting those out in the universe.
Tuesday or Wednesday, right?
Yeah.
Are the district's meetings the second week or the second Monday or second Tuesday, second Wednesday?
It's the second
Full week?
Monday, Tuesday, Correct.
Yeah.
Because I'm just wondering what happens when you have, like, the month starts with a Thursday. So
It would be-
potentially they're not all
First full,
meetings.
would be-
second full week,
Correct, you move into the second Monday
Yeah.
of that month.
So it's the
second full. week.
first Tuesday, let's say, or the second Tuesday. That's the way it is. So,
And we will have a board meeting scheduled for all the local boards in April. That will-
yeah. So, first Tuesday,
Works.
how many people? First Tuesday at 6 o'clock here. Okay. Amanda?
Tuesday or Wednesday work for me, so I'm flexible, whatever works best for everyone else.
Okay. So it looks like by a raise of hands here, Tuesday. So it'd be the first Tuesday of each month, 6 PM here at central office.
And the first Tuesday would be April 4th. Thank you.
Yes. All right, and board retreat, if we could do that at the next meeting, if you want to make that decision. Annual meeting, we don't have an annual meeting. Motion would be in order for the use of Robert's rules for small boards. Motion by Tina.
I'll second.
Second by Mike. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Most everyone's already signed the code of ethics at your local district board meeting. And agendas and minutes will be posted on our website and at local schools, post office, and libraries. Motion would be,
Central office too.
oh, right, and central office.
I make a motion that we appoint Chris Leopold as our attorney.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Our media source, Rutland Herald. Is there anything in the southern half that people would like us to use? Like we use Lakeside News for Poultney?
Possibly the Free Press?
Is that what it's called?
We have the Free Press down here that gets mailed to everybody.
But that's the name of it, Free Press? Oh, okay, all right,
Yep, the Free Press.
okay. All right. And a motion would be in order to authorize the administration to request and expand available grant funds from the Agency of Education as well as the state and federal funds.
I so move.
Motion by Linda. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. And a motion would be in order to authorize the board chair to sign director's orders and other documents on behalf of the board as necessary.
I make the motion.
Motion by Mike. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I don't have a second page, but we need to do policy committee. And I think that's the only standing committee we currently have, is policy. So, actually, people should, did you delineate policy members from your local board? Okay. Okay. All right. Can we just share who those are, since it's a division of the, I mean, it's from this board, so.
Myself, and Amanda on the policy committee.
Okay, and did you have an alternate?
No.
Okay, Tina?
Go back and remind, I know I'm on it, I believe.
I think
Abby
Abby.
was on it.
Okay.
And then I think Colin's the alternate. Yeah, I think he volunteered himself to be the alternate.
Okay. And does anybody remember ours?
Kristen?
It's Kristen.
Oh, Kristen.
Kristen, and then Kate said she'd be the
Oh,
alternate.
yeah, that's right, and Kate. Okay. And do we have an alternate?
No.
Board's never designated alternates. So.
Ours has, because it's a representative from each board.
Okay.
So
alternate acts in place of the normal person if they're not able to be there.
But, I mean, the supervisory union board is the parent board of the policy committee, so.
Right.
We would need to discuss that here and make that determination.
To have an alternate?
Well, the policy committee, we decided as an SU board to have 2 representatives, regardless whether they were part of the SU board or the local board. So,
Yeah, so that's why you would,
so you always would have,
An
those
alternate.
2 available.
Well, what I'm saying is if we're gonna designate alternates, we've never done that. Like, as a policy committee, if someone couldn't make it, then they couldn't make it. As long as you had a quorum, you would still have the committee. And if we're gonna do that, then the supervisory union board should have at least talked about it and said that we're going to have alternates as, for the committee. Because other than that, just like how we changed our bylaws last year with the SU board, before we can have any board member come to an SU meeting and participate, but we changed our bylaws. So.
yeah, but we could have alternates come to this board. It just was that if you were coming as a member of the public, you couldn't sit at the
Yeah.
table and participate. But like if Linda couldn't come tonight, she could have called Kristen and Kristen could have come in her place, so we would have
I know,
three.
yeah,
Yeah,
sorry. But this isn't a committee,
yeah.
But what I'm saying is that.
I mean, are you, you're not in favor of having alternates?
Oh, it's whatever this board wants to do. What I'm saying is that, like, for example, we've had many meetings where one person or another couldn't make it.
Mm-hmm.
And there was never any, criteria for having an alternate. Otherwise, I would have sought out, like, for example, for Wells Springs, and I think would have been the same for Quarry Valley. So as far as I know, Rutland Town has been the only board that's been designating alternates, which was news to me. So we had a conversation back in, I think it was February, on how the policy committee was going to continue going forward. We never talked about alternates then. But if we're doing that now, I'm fine, whatever the board wants to do. If the board wants to do alternates, what I'm saying is that it needs to start here and then go down to the local level.
I think that we've always allowed alternates for committees and different things. I think that at Quarry Valley, we were just pulling teeth to get 2 people to go. So, let alone try to find someone that was an alternate. I mean, that would have just been plush. So, yeah, I don't think there's any downside to it. We probably didn't discuss it here, but I think a lot of times, a lot of our old sheets used to have alternates on when we did committees. And we used to have finance, policy, buildings and grounds, and different things like that. So, does anyone have an objection to having alternates for the policy committee? Mike, you have something?
Do the committees operate under Robert's rules? Then that would allow for an alternate.
It's only in delegations for alternates. And then the only objection I would say to the policy committee is that if you have a group of people working on the same policy that comes up, then if you have an alternate come in, they may not be up to speed on that policy. That's the only issue,
Right, but at least you have someone there that can come back to your board and share with your district board, so I think that's the part. Oh, Amanda?
I was just gonna say, I'm not opposed to having alternates, but just 2 things. One is, I would think that we need to go back to the local boards because we did not give alternates in Wells Springs, for one. And then the other thing, it's kind of like what Eric said, like what we do in policy committee, we do it over 3, 4, 5 weeks sometimes. So if we have an alternate and we're at week 4, then potentially we're spending a lot of time reviewing weeks 1 through 4 to make a decision with that person in the end. And not that that person shouldn't have a voice, they should, but maybe the better option would be the person that can't attend would shoot an email to the policy committee to say, I can't be here, but here's my thoughts, just because it is such deep discussion. But either way, like whatever we decide, I'm fine with, that's just my opinion.
Mike?
I have a question. Aren't these committees a subcommittee of this board?
Yes,
Then we can do that.
have
Well,
alternate.
because it wouldn't have to go back to local boards because it's a subcommittee of this board, not a subcommittee of the local board. Those boards just assign somebody to be on it.
Yeah, that's what she's saying.
Yeah, they didn't
Right,
pick,
I
go back.
they didn't pick an alternate.
That's right, but we don't have to, it doesn't have to filter back down to them.
Yeah.
It's this board that would decide whether or not to have alternates. And what their power is.
Okay, so just someone,
Right, what I meant by go back was go back to them, so if they didn't pick an alternate, then they would. That's what I meant by
Yeah,
go
that makes
back, because some of the local boards did, that's all. Not to make a decision or share an opinion, but to get an alternate if they didn't have one, if that decision was made.
Right.
Sorry that I wasn't clear.
Just real quick, I feel like it'd be more clear if it was stated not that we're sending a person, but we're sending a representative as an alternate, right?
That's what they are.
Yeah, so we're sending a representative of our board, we're not sending a particular person that you have to bring up to speed. It is our prerogative as a board to share at the local board, like what's happening, and hopefully that who was there at the particular meeting, say 10 out of 12 meetings, will share with that alternate, like, this is what we've been working on, this is what I can provide you, so that they're coming with some insight, right? But it's not a person coming in totally askew to the process, so.
Yeah, I just hope that if someone couldn't make it and it was short notice, and they said, called in their alternate, then, too, they would be spending a lot of time, in committee talking about that stuff. But I mean, it's just little things that can make a difference, but,
so what's the prerogative of the board? Alternates, no alternates? Who would like to make a
I'll
motion?
make a motion for alternates as representatives from each district to
I
the.
second it. Do we have to second it here?
No.
We don't, okay, good. It's
Mike
for
makes a
everyone.
motion to allow alternate representatives from district boards to the policy committee. Discussion.
Do alternates need to be specified by name, or can it simply be, it allows for any alternate board member to attend in lieu of the assigned individual?
I think it would be preferred that it was assigned by name. I think if someone wants to be an alternate, that,
Your credentials.
yeah.
I'm just thinking, like, 5 p.m. someone has an accident, is reaching out to board members, seeing if someone can fill in.
Yeah.
The alternate might not be able to, like, on short notice.
Yeah.
Maybe someone else might be able to.
Yeah, kind of what we've set up in our board. If you can't make something, you can call the chair, and the chair can usually fill in for you. So that's kind of the fallback. But I think it also gives more people on your boards, because like we have larger boards, an opportunity to be involved in kind of what's happening. And sometimes people that are alternates will attend meetings just to attend the meetings because they are alternates. I mean, we've seen that happen before. So we used to have alternates to this board from other districts come and sat in the meetings, I mean, prior to COVID. So I don't think it's that unique. Any other discussion?
yeah, no, I just wanted to say that, that the work's being done, it really is just about, getting the policies developed. So, I mean, as far as like representation goes, it's great to have that representation, but, just keep in mind that it's gonna come to the SU board, and then
Right.
that process. So, I mean, there's still a lot of process, but also like refinement that can be done too.
Sure.
So.
All right, additional discussion. All those in favor of Mike's motion to allow alternate representatives from district boards to the policy committee? I was like,
Calling for vote?
Aye,
yes.
aye.
All those opposed?
And thank you, policy people, because that's what keeps us safe. So thank you for all that you
All
do.
Motion passes unanimously. That's the only committee.
Oh, and I didn't, for Ira, it's.
Oh, Ira, yeah.
Barton is representative.
Okay. And then you'd be the alternate.
And at present, it's just.
Okay. The fun stuff is done. Amanda?
Do we have a finance committee? I thought we used to have an SU finance committee, is that?
We did at one time, but then the board decided that when we developed the budget, to develop the budget as a whole, rather than, kind of the philosophy, it used to be the executive committee met along with maybe a couple of the people from finance with Lewis and put the budget together. So it seemed like it was a little duplicit for Lewis to have to attend more meetings and then come to the SU board
Do it all over again.
and basically share the same information with the board as a whole. And we had new members to the board, and last year was the decision of the board to put the budget together. And actually, there's not a whole lot with the SU board that we have a lot of control over, other than when we're setting salaries and like that. Otherwise, a huge component of it is the special ed, which we have little to no. And then, then it's just the division out back to each district what our portion is. If the board would like to create a finance board or a finance committee, we could. It's up to the board.
I don't mind either way. I just wasn't sure if it was something that we had and if anyone felt that we should have it, not just for, reviewing budget kind of overall, but if something were to come up during the year, did anyone feel like there was a benefit of a finance committee? I don't mind either way.
Yeah, I think the one thing we talked about was we were going to start budgets a little earlier this year, right?
Yep.
So that we would start doing budgets maybe July as a first round kind of look. So we'll be in a better place, but this year, it didn't seem like the SU budget, there was much discussion or struggle with it.
The only problem with starting too early, which we saw this year, was that we're putting budgets together before we have a lot of those outside factors that are affecting our budget. And so I know, like for instance with Wells, there was a lot of, I don't know what the word is, but let's just say panic for now about the budget being up so much without knowing how it was actually going to affect the tax rate. And then once we got those other factors, and so there was a lot of budget meetings about cutting and what should we cut. But then when we got those outside factors, like the yield and the CLA and equalized pupils, it changed the picture completely, and in the end, didn't end up cutting a lot of the stuff that we had talked about. So by starting too early, in a way, you create a lot of months where we're just wondering what we do, almost spinning our wheels without having all of that other information.
Sure. And that's what we could talk about at local districts, but I think it also gives you the opportunity at your local districts, if you have any kind of projects or anything like that, to kind of talk about, so. Amanda?
I think the only real benefit that we could get this year out of a finance committee is looking deeper into like post-ESSER funds stuff that we all have in the back of our mind and we all know we have to start looking at, but possibly that could be a group that collects information and brings back to help us achieve that more quickly or efficiently. I don't know.
I think that's something that we're doing internally, between me, Chris, and Lisa, and we know what the board's directive is as far as making sure that there is not a impact to local budgets based on ESSER going away, and we keep that in mind with every decision we make when we're spending ESSER. And, we can provide updates to the board as often as you like with how ESSER's going and the spending and stuff like that. I don't know that additional meetings to discuss that. Because the one thing that we discussed in prior years is the problem with having the finance committee is then the whole board doesn't know what's going on. And so and the whole board wants to make those decisions and know what's going on with the SU budget, and that was the reason why the Finance Committee didn't happen. And I think we've been pretty efficient with discussing the SU budget at the SU meeting, and
Transparent.
Yep.
Eric?
Yeah, well, we had a discussion at our reorganization meeting about finance, and that, maybe that's where Amanda's getting at, is that when we looked at our budget, you know, just looking exactly what's in the budget, I guess we have the finance committee on a reorganization template, but if there's no committee at all, I'm just wondering why. But if the SU budget or that finance committee is just for, or has been for, the budget itself, is there another purpose for it?
In the past, there hasn't been.
I mean, I think this goes back to, in the past, a long time ago, there used to be finance committees. But I know for the last few years, and even part of my budget timeline, I've brought up, does the board want to create a finance committee to discuss that? And I know for several years in a row, both the SU boards and the local boards were not in support of creating finance committees because they wanted the full board to have all of that information and discussion. Really, I mean, the finance committee, if you have a finance committee, the finance committee would go into detail about the budget. And then when you get to the local board, you're not providing all that same detail. I mean, you would just give highlights, less than we do now, and then the board would be voting. It doesn't make sense to go through all of that information with the finance committee and then go through all of that information with the local boards. It defeats the purpose of having that committee. If you want to have that committee would then make a recommendation to the board about the finances that were discussed and request approval for the budget that's being presented. And there would be limited discussion at the full board meeting.
I mean, currently what we've been doing here, I mean, we saw it last year. Greg creates his budget, you know, each kind of department head like that is creating their budget, bringing it. We had them come, they talked about it, you know, justified if they were reorganizing, whatever it is that they were doing, and then ask questions at that point. I think that's sometimes what made the finance committee maybe go away, because like Louis said, you were kind of repeating the same thing to the full board as a whole, because 4 of us are on the committee, but then you come and everybody else is asking the same questions, and whether you think you're going to go in depth or not, I mean, if people have questions and they've looked at it, those questions need to be addressed. So it's easier to address them once. And the other piece is, I mean, we've already switched meetings, so we have administration, you know, kind of streamlined. I don't think we want to start creating more meetings for our department heads, in my opinion, but that's just my personal opinion.
Well, I was on the finance committee the last go around. I was here, and except for myself learning more about how it works, I agree. I don't think it's necessary, but that's my own opinion.
And that was one reason we at Corey Valley chose to do it as a whole, because we had so many new members, and to really try to educate them this past year, have Louis come and talk about it, so everyone understood how we were putting our budget together and what it looked like, because we changed our philosophy also. Rather than having, you know, a bucket for each community, we kind of just compressed it into one bucket. So there was couple challenges there for how people looked at things.
I mean, I personally don't think you need a finance committee. As far as Wells Springs went, I don't think we panicked. We recognized that the previous budget, we just passed by the skin of our teeth. So I think we looked at everything. We outreached to the community, so we had a better understanding of what they wanted. So
Sure.
It was a little panicky at times, you're right, but I think what we did was good, and
Yeah.
it got us, this budget passed a little more comfortably, so I'm happy with the work we did.
Yeah.
It's more collaborative that way, so I think that's what we found, is it was more collaborative that way.
Okay. So it sounds like the consensus is at this point just to move forward and we'll create the budget as a board with recommendations.
Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make it such a.
No, that's fine. There's, that's what we're here for, to make sure everyone's on the same page. All right, approval of the agenda. A motion would be in order to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mike. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. General public comment. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak at this time to an issue or an area not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on. Approval of the minutes of February 8th. A motion would be in order to approve the minutes.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mike. Discussion.
On page 5, and I may have missed it in your report, Chris, but it states that the parent-teacher conferences are March 31st and April 1st, which I believe they're April 6th and April 7th.
That's correct.
So I just wanted to make sure that that was corrected when it goes out. And then I found 2 little typos, so I can hand you my paperwork.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. A motion will be in order for the approval of the March 6th special meeting. Lance? Motion by Lance. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Approval of the warrants. You receive your GRCSU warrants via your GRCSU email. All questions, comments should be directed to Lewis. A motion would be in order for the approval of the warrants. Motion by Tina. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Superintendent's report.
Thank you, Lisa. I apologize for getting out so late. The reason why I waited was there's a lot happening in the legislature, and I want to make sure that the information that I provide you with was the most current, or at least as current as could be. The executive director of the VSA, Jeff Francis, does a nice job every once in a while, well, I say once in a while, all the time, of providing us with good summaries in terms of what's going on. I did include that report in there, and I narrowed the focus really down to education bills that could potentially impact the SU. Just to, and a lot of these we've discussed at our local level about the impact around, let's say, universal school meals, and now looking at the, funding that out of the ed fund. We're looking at pre-K. Initially has now been shifted to a task force, which I'm happy with. I have expressed some concerns that if they would look to, and Lewis and I have talked about this, and other superintendents as well, about shifting all 4-year-olds to our schools, the impact that would have in terms of just staffing, classroom space, funding. It would just be very difficult for us to accommodate that at our current time. And so I think that's what the task force will hopefully take a look at that and look at the local impacts of that piece of legislation through there. So I know that also, I think it's what's H, put my glasses back on, but I just make sure I say the right one. There's the House bill around school choice that, it would, was it H 438 or?
483.
483, thank you. I had dyslexia there, so. So H 483. There were 2 versions of the bill prior to this, and this was kind of the resolution. This is the one that has cleared the floor, and they're looking to move forward with. So just something to keep an eye on. I know that we did receive a letter from our VSA asking us to reach out to our local reps to ask them to support this piece of legislation, which I will be doing tomorrow. So. But like I said, a lot of this is more for just informational purposes. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to ask them the best I can.
You were on the webinar Monday, right?
The Carson, you making? Yes.
Was 483, was that when that was?
That's what they were discussing, that is the pragmatic response, they call it. So the first two, we're looking to, I think we're more of a knee-jerk reaction to, and I think they were looking to have schools, or, say like Rutland Town of West Springs, we have to identify 3 schools, and they saw that as being problematic, I think, or not the best solution, so I think they were looking more of 483 would be kind of a nice, happy medium for everyone that's just trying to, and you heard a lot, and if you're on that webinar, a lot about equity. That's really what the concern is, that the state is just funding 2 systems that are not equitable. And so this would look to kind of align that a little bit better and bring that more.
So they removed the preschool designation in this, I haven't read it.
Yes. So.
Everyone should have gotten this afternoon, I think from Sue, she sent out like a little brief thing that you can copy and paste to send to your legislature for 483, and then she gives you, there's background information. It came out, I don't know, just this afternoon.
4 o'clock or something.
Yeah, at 4 o'clock, so it's a pretty good synopsis of what that is. So she does a nice job of summarizing that, I think.
There's one other, which is DR 23-0993, which is around the school construction task force. I think what's of note of this is they have attacked PCBs in this. So we have had some of our schools who have gone through testing. I know we have one school, Polton Elementary, which has had a recommendation around remediation, and what the next steps are, we're waiting for. We've contracted with Harper Environmental. We're just waiting for them to do the work. There has been a bit of a delayed response in terms of testing and feedback. I think the state is trying to better understand or better grasp how they're going to move forward with this. And so I think that's, they've looked at tucking this into the school construction aid task force, understanding there is a correlation between PCBs and the work and the money that would maybe potentially need to remediate, mitigate schools, and also looking at, some of our older schools and whether or not it's really worth it. And I know that they talk a lot about the Rhode Island model. If you're on that webinar, and other webinars, you hear this. But a lot of it really is just making some decisions around if a school needs, say, hundreds of thousands of dollars, decisions really need to be made, and whether or not that just is financially the best path is to go through that remediation mitigation with that. So there's a lot of discussion around the school construction and PCBs that we'll keep an eye out on. So.
And then the universal school, well, that's, I don't know, it depends on what side of the table I guess you're on that. What are the implications? I read one where we still have to have families fill out. It was difficult to get them to fill out information prior when everyone was receiving things for free. Why do we think they're going to be interested in doing that now? And if they choose not to fill out that information, is there a fiscal implication for schools?
So that is a concern that's been shared. At the all members, we did share that around these forms, these declaration forms that need to be returned, and if families choose not to, or and that's a very real possibility. I know that the states I've worked in, they've had that same battle around returning forms, and with funding being attached to this, and the importance is just as very difficult. So you kind of wait to see. I know Lewis could talk more about the financial impact and what they may look like. So Lewis, if you want to.
Yeah, there's 2 financial impacts. So, that free and reduced number is used for many other things. It's used for other grants, both in food service and outside food service. It's part of CFP, which is our consolidated federal grants, title grants, fresh fruit and vegetable grant. So, by having lower numbers, it does impact us, and that has been a struggle for the last 2 years to get applications. We are seeing an uptick this year. We launched a campaign earlier this year where we put a lot of information on our websites and school offices, and had schools send out many mailings to try to increase that. The other side of it is, I know during our budget meetings, we talked a lot about the surplus, and that yield recommendation was using that full surplus to lower tax rates and increase that yield. if they now use some of that surplus to have universal meals, which I believe was $29 million for this current year,
Yeah.
we're gonna possibly see a decrease in the recommended yield that we use to calculate our tax rates. And I think it was 2 to 3 cents
Yeah.
of an impact. So we could see the tax rates that we presented to taxpayers and to boards could be different if this is approved, then that decreases that yield.
So is it possible for us to create something on the website or send through an email that people can just click that they're for free and reduced? Because I know like in some communities, it doesn't just impact schools, it also impacts nonprofits and sometimes municipality, depending on what you're applying for. If you can show you have a higher level of free and reduced, particularly like at the library, for me, if I can show that is a benefit for literacy grants and things like that. So I'm just wondering if there's a way we can make it easier so we don't see such a significant decline in people responding.
And I know this fall, there was a lot of information on, there was the applications, there was,
But does it have to be
campaign
only in
documents.
hard form? Or can it be on?
Currently, the application is in hard form. It has to be processed through each school's front office. That's the current model that we're at. As far as making the application electronic, I'd have to look into that.
Okay.
I mean, the other option is to have one person designated at the SU to process all applications, and some SUs do that. That would take the burden off the schools, but it does create a burden at the SU and potentially man hours here.
Yeah, I just hate to see us lose out there. All right. Lisa Mattson, Assistant.
Good evening, everyone. No written report from me this month. I know you guys had a big agenda for tonight. So just the two primary updates. One is around Cognia. We are getting ready to start the Vermont Comprehensive Assessment Program, which is what they're calling the new SBAC. Administration will be April 12th to May 26th, and this past in-service, prior to in-service, we were able to train all of the principals and also all of the building level test coordinators, and we developed the training materials and ran those for them, and then we developed additional training materials for all the staff who were trained during the March in-service day, and just a big thank you to our staff for hanging in there. It's not always the most fascinating training material to go through, but they were attentive, asked wonderful questions, engaged with the materials, and made sure that they were building their own confidence and readiness for administration. And we know that the school-based teams are working hard right now to get their schedules set and to get all the pre-work steps done that they have to do before the window opens. So big thanks to our staff, but we're on the right track to get ready to go. And then the second piece is just to let you know, I was planning to bring you a curriculum update in April. We've been working with the last few teams to just wrap up the last couple pieces, and I'll have a full reporting for you in April or whenever you'd like me to bring it, to let you know where we landed after all the work the teacher teams have done this year. And that was it for me this month, unless anybody has any questions.
I think April will be great for the curriculum update. That gives us enough time to kind of hear it and see where we're going for the upcoming year and see if we have any work to do or plan for over the summer then too. So.
Great.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Personnel, contract recommendations. For our current FY23 professional staff, a motion would be in order to approve as presented, which is for one person.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Tina. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
The next group is FY24 new hires and rehires. Six candidates in that group. A motion will be in order to approve as presented.
Make a motion.
Motion by Lance Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The next would be for FY '24 bargaining unit teachers' contract salaries. And that's about page 1, 2, and the top of page 3. A motion would be in order to approve as presented.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Eric. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? A motion would be in order for FY '24 non-bargaining unit professional staff salaries. 6 candidates in that group.
Make a motion.
Motion by Tina. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Support staff. A motion would be in order for current year FY '23. There are 2 candidates in that group.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Amanda. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. FY '24 bargaining unit support staff contract rates for page 3, 4, and 5 as presented.
So moved.
Motion by Linda. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. A motion would be in order for FY '24 non-bargaining unit support staff salaries and hourly rates.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mike. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. A motion would be in order for the 2 resignations, Lori Smith and Katie Loomis. Motion by Eric. All those in favor, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right, finance, Lewis.
So,
Oh.
you have a
April has a
question by
question.
Amanda.
April, you have a question?
Do have a question. Thank you for recognizing me. I noticed that the chat is disabled, so I couldn't put it in there. So my question is, so I was listening on the meeting on Monday, and I understand when you have pages of folks that you are talking about, that you don't list all the names. But when there's only 1 or 2, is there a reason why none of those got listed this evening? Or the rate of pay increases for the non-union employees that you were talking about as well? That's all public information.
It is, and it'll be in the minutes.
All of it?
Yes.
Thank you.
And just to know, I disabled the chat after public comments is over, so that's why the chat is disabled.
Okay,
Because the public comment section is over, so that's why.
that's fine. Yeah, I think if you look at our prior minutes, that, that information is always in about,
Is the salary listed? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
yeah, she takes it right from there. All right, Lewis.
So included in the packet were some sub-grant agreements. This is not new money that we're spending, it's stuff that we've already discussed, but in order to be in compliance, we have to have sub-grant agreements on file. And what that means is, when we receive federal funds, the funds come to the supervisory union. If we as a supervisory union decide that we're going to spend some of those funds directly at the district level, that's called a sub-grant. So for example, if you have an employee who works for, say, Corey Valley, and we don't want to terminate them at Corey Valley and rehire them at GRCSU, we want to keep them at Corey Valley, we can sub-grant those funds. And some grants we do that for, and some grants we don't, depending on the grant. ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 are 2 of those grants that we are sub-granting, because there is a lot of cases where we have employees that are doing things like summer school, after school, it will not have, summer school or PD, and it would be a lot of administrative work to have to create duplicate payroll records at the SU and at the local district because they're working some summer school hours or because they're doing a PD where they're getting $100 stipend. So in those cases, we decided to subgrant. And then there are a few other limited, where there's situations like with ESSER 2 where we're funding some of your local teachers with those ESSER 2 funds for this current year. So we're subgranting those funds. They're all positions that we've already talked about, like I said. The amounts listed are based on what's currently in the grant, but that we do periodically change that based on amendments and discussions that we have. We don't update the subgrant agreement each time. It's just subject to change. But we just have to have these on file saying that the board approved these subgrant agreements.
Can we approve them as one, or you want us to approve them separately?
Yes.
All right, so motion will be in order to approve the sub-grant agreements as presented.
So moved.
Motion by Linda. Any discussion? Eric?
So these subgrants, so last year we did the same thing for different subgrants, or are these the same subgrants?
These are the same subgrant agreements. We just started spending ESSER 3 this year, and ESSER 2 we've been spending this year and last year. These are the first ones that we're doing, so we're a little behind on this.
Okay. And I guess all the ESSER 2 grants need to be used by September, right?
Our plan is that we will finish using ESSER 2 by the end of this fiscal year. There may be a little bit straggling that will finish off over the summer, but I think 99% of it will be finished by June 30th.
All right. My other question is, I don't quite understand. So is some of this specific, have a specific use?
Yes, so ESSER 3, the main use for that is the summer programs.
Okay.
So we've put money aside for all of the school summer programs, as well as there's a little bit set aside for, like, when we have PD and we're paying stipends for that PD. ESSER 2 was some summer programs, and then there's positions at each school that we're currently funding for 1 year through ESSER 2. Those were decisions that we made after the last round of bargaining, that we decided we were going to put certain positions in the ESSER grant for 1 year. So there's one position at Wells Springs, there's one at Rutland Town, and 2 at Quarry Valley.
Now, for these summer programs, is this for all schools in the supervisory union?
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Lisa? I just wanted to mention that I do not believe salaries are mentioned in the minutes.
Oh, when I do the minutes, I put them in there.
Yeah, and at least not in the SU, they're not.
Okay, we can ask her to put them in.
I'll go back and have her add them as an attachment. to the
Okay.
minutes.
Yeah,
Thank you.
So then if there was not in the last one, we can have her put an attachment on the online.
Perfect. Thank you.
okay. Old business, is there any old business to come before the board?
Can I ask Louis a question?
Oh, sure.
It was not related to the subgrants, but it was to your report. I may have missed when you were talking a little bit about the food, but when did you receive bids yet, and when, how's that process going?
So we went out to bid, so it's been advertised. Bids are due back at the end of this month. On March 1st, I believe, we had a pre-proposal conference where the bidders came in and had the opportunity to ask questions. And then I think it was last week, we had walkthroughs of the 6 schools' kitchens with the prospective bidders. So we should be receiving bids in the next month's almost over, so in the next week.
So for the April meeting then?
Well, we're meeting April 4th.
Well, so we switched the board meeting schedule, and the bid was, I'll have to take a look at that, because I think we were planning on approving it at the end of April, based on the old schedule when I put the bid together. I don't know that we'll be ready to present it at the April
Okay.
4th meeting. We may have to push that to the May 5th meeting, because the committee that we formed to review the bids will have to meet, and
Okay,
there's a scoring
sure.
rubric that we'll have to look at, and then possibly go back to bidders and ask questions, check references, maybe even do walkthroughs of some of the schools that they're in, to compare, so we can make a good
Okay.
decision.
Sure.
So I think the May board meeting would probably be better.
Okay.
So will the food service committee be meeting again to go over the bids, or how's it?
Yes, I'll be reaching out to you at the beginning of April.
Thank you.
Do we have a deadline that we have to sign by?
We just have to have it in place before summer programs start.
That's what I meant. Is there a date or roughly?
I mean, I think by the end of May would be ideal.
All right. Anything else for Louis? Okay. Old business. All right. New business. Everyone has a copy of the 2023-24 GRCSU school calendar.
And this, as we say every year, that we set a regional calendar that has been approved by the states, and this is what this is based off of. Our calendar does require us to have 186 teacher days, 180 student days. I know that the colors code did not come out on this, so there are a lot of blank spaces, but in terms of, some of the half days, really should be shaded in, but they're not here, so. But that's something which we can resolve. So I just wonder if there are any questions about this?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I don't know if I missed this on the last calendar, but, oh, never mind. I just figured it out myself.
So I had some questions. This year, our spring conferences are April 6th and 7th, and for this upcoming year, you move them a little later.
So our conferences are after quarter 1 and quarter 3. And so if quarter 3 ends April 3rd, I do believe, and April 4th is the start of the 4th quarter. And when we looked at when to place conferences, we thought by pushing them back a week gives our staff an opportunity to really kind of finalize and get things prepped and ready to go, as to try to put them on April 4th and 5th, which would be the very next day after that quarter ends. So that's why it was moved there, but it is right after quarter 3. So it's in the first week of the quarter 4, but that's traditionally where it has been.
Does it have to stay there? And the reason I ask is there's so much testing that happens after spring break that there's not as much learning or as much teaching available just due to time. And if there is something that the student could do to change the way they're learning or, improve themselves, it doesn't really give them a lot of time. I was wondering if it was possible, or what was thought about moving it earlier so that there's more time to pivot for the student.
Well, I agree, but we also would hope that there'd be ongoing conversations between parents. I know we talked about progress reports, and, and that was one of our goals of progress reports, was to encourage communication and to kind of highlight to parents, how well students are doing, promote conversations around this. I'm not necessarily opposed to moving through. I think that'd be something which I would want to go back, and I know Lisa's still on the phone, really talk about where it makes sense. But I think if the notion of students, relying on that conference and to sit there and say, hey, you need to move, hopefully teachers would be reaching out to families or students prior to this, wouldn't just be waiting for a conference to deliver good news or bad news at this particular time. And so that's why we have an online portal for parents to access grades at any time, to take a look at where they're at. We have progress reports. We have a lot of points of contact during the course of the year outside of conferences. So
True, but we, at least in the middle school and up, we're trying to do the personal learning plans, and we're asking kids to look at themselves and their goals. And, if they're reporting with one more quarter left about things that they want to improve and they want to do better on their own, and then we're taking, 2 or 3 of these weeks and we're saying, you got to test, Monday, Wednesday, Friday this week, and Tuesday, Thursday next week, and then we're going to do this test Monday and this test Thursday. It's like they don't really have a chance to improve on their own goals that we're asking
So
them.
when would you like to see conferences move to, Tina?
Well, I went through on great schools and looked at the Vermont schools that had like a 7 or up rating, and just looked at when they had it, and most of these schools had it near the end of March, either the March 24th of this year, March 20, so this is Champlain Valley School District. The Hartford School District has it March 31st. Mount Mansfield has it March 24th.
This is this year, correct? That you're
This
saying?
is this year, yeah. South Burlington has it March 24th, I think. Oh, wait, let me check that. No, they have it April 6th and 7th, like us.
Did those schools start, did they start before us? So-
They almost all start around the same time as us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Colchester has it March 7th, actually, for PK through 12th, which is really early. And Essex has it, I believe, March 24th. So most schools actually have it March 24th, and they all start around the same time and end around the same time.
Do you have any regional schools that or you just looked at Chittenden County or?
No, Hartford.
Right, but, so.
Isn't
I think we look at,
I looked at Burr Burton, which is also a little, a little different.
So I think this, I think this would be something we want to take back to the admins to take a look at. I think knowing that you had the calendar, it would have been good to maybe give a heads up and just kind of what we're thinking, because we could have been a little bit more prepared to talk about this shift.
I apologize. I thought that you were briefed on Monday.
Right, but if you have a question, you should be reaching out to me directly as well. That's part of what we discussed, and so about what the focus of this is. So I think if Lisa Madison's on who handles the assessments, I don't think we're really necessary. I think if we're going to make a shift, I think we want to make a shift not because of what other schools are doing. We really have to look philosophally what's best for our kids.
Right.
And not just one board member, one individual. I think we have to look at, take into account, I said, talking to our admin, talking to our staff, and really looking at what makes most sense for us to make that shift, not just because of, like I said, one thing or another. I think that's what we want to take a look at. Good. So Lisa, do you have any thoughts on conferences? I think this is just a traditional placement, but.
Yeah, as some school districts work on a trimester basis, I know we were in a school just yesterday doing a walkthrough, and they have a trimester schedule, and they were preparing for parent-teacher conferences, but they only have 3 marking periods instead of 4. So, but Tina, I do think that you are right. There are not only just from testing, but field trips and end-of-year celebrations, and many of the traditional activities that occur in the spring in our schools don't necessarily lend themselves well to students having intense academic fourth quarter goals at all grade levels.
And I do apologize. I didn't mention Rutland City, but they just had their conferences on the 17th. So they are a regional area.
They're the regional one, yeah. And like I said, we're not opposed. I think it's one that, but as we go through this process, like I said, it's moving parts. I think one of the things that I want to make sure of is we are making decisions. We're also involving the educators, because it's really a philosophical discussion in terms of why we're having conferences, what's the purpose of having conferences, and what makes most sense for us to have them in the middle of a quarter, which is what we'll be pushing it to. Is does that make most sense for us to have it just in the middle of between second and third quarter? But it depends on what we're trying to do, what the point or purpose of.
Right, but are you a teacher, Tina? No. Okay, because you had mentioned something about when 7th and 8th grade kids are.
Well, I have kids.
Okay.
So.
Okay, because I think you did bring up that you're looking at the learning
Right.
of the child.
Mhm.
So I like Chris's idea too of bringing in educators to talk about it, because they're the grassroots level, and they know, as parents do, of the kids and the learning, and as Lisa said too, we do have a decrease in learning towards the end. So the more that you can get to the child, I think is what you're saying.
And just help them realize what they want.
Right.
To try to
But I
work.
like the idea of the philosophy of what is the parent-teacher conference too.
Sure.
That is a great thing too.
This was shared with the association, and our admins all looked at this, and I think to go back, I think would require a good discussion around what is the purpose of our conferences? What are we trying to do with them? And then I think we would then come back with what we felt would be a suitable date, and hopefully the board would support that date. So, or those dates. And it might be similar, it might be a movement, so, but.
And it might be something to think about for 24, 25, if we couldn't do it for 20,
Well, we do have, like I said, we have, I think with this, we change, we'd have to not
But we
approve
have-
the calendar tonight.
Well, we could.
Oh, good.
April 4th is still coming up soon, too.
But it also requires us, how much, we have to then try to get this before the association, have them have conversation with them, conversation with administrators. It does go by pretty quickly as well, so.
So I guess that was my question is, hearing this, I mean, do you still support this calendar? Or,
So I have no issue with moving of dates. But I want to make sure we're moving of dates because we feel philosophically, from an educational standpoint, it's best, not because of what other schools, as identified by a ranking system, are doing. I think we have to look at really what is best for our kids, what's going to meet their needs and our staff needs. I think that's the discussion I really want to have. And if we're shifting it to 2 or 3 weeks, then that's fine. And like I said, we can move that wherever, but I also don't want us make a decision tonight and then the staff being like, why are we doing this in the middle of the quarter? For what reason was this? There's no real discussion around this. So I think that's where we have to go back and really talk about philosophically about conferences. And, to be honest, I think, conferences are nice, but we have many points of contact during the course of the year,
Well, philosophically now, what do we say the reason for conferences are? Because personally, I think it depends on your child, what the purpose for your conference is. Because, whether your child is on no problems, upper learning, moving along, or a child that's struggling. And I don't know, as a prior educator, I think when you have students like that, you also see those parents and students, whether, in the classroom or now, didn't have it back in the dark ages, but email and FaceTime and those kinds of things. So there's a little more contact, but maybe that's the primary question. Philosophically, what is the purpose for parent-teacher conferences? I have to say that I went to every parent-teacher conference, but I didn't learn anything that I didn't already know from the kitchen table. So,
Well, with the personal learning plan, the kids from middle school and up kind of are supposed to look at how they're doing, present it, and state goals that they have about what they like to do and and then the second conference in the year, they usually state how they were doing on their goals from the beginning and what would they like to continue working on
Right.
for the rest of the year.
yeah, we had student-led conferences even when my daughter was in school, and it was kind of the same thing. But, I mean, if you're having those conversations, or I don't know, the kids around my table were sharing, maybe they're just sharing too much, but you knew what was going on. It wasn't like any big surprise or update, is what I'm saying.
And really, student-led conferences, I worked this many years, should be 3 times a year, ideally. At the beginning of the year, mid-year, and end of the year. Twice a year is not necessarily ideal, because even though they go through, there is no, at the end of the year, in terms of how well did I do and reflection, it just kind of.
So is there a reason that we don't do that?
We're looking at CBA and things along those lines, just in terms of another night. So we'd have to look at, other stuff. So that's what I'm saying about philosophically. I'm not opposed to this, but I think it's, really more than just, changing a date, just move it to, we really have to look at what is the purpose. And I think what meets one school's needs, like I said, what you explained makes sense in terms of why 2 weeks, might work out, but for another school who've had it after the, third quarter and really, here's where we're at and here's where we need to be, So, and like I said, that's traditionally where it's been, so.
So my brain is saying, you just stated that, maybe 3 would be ideal. So my idea is, well, then you have 1 and then you have the other 2, or when you're only able to have 2, you have those in the middle of when you would have had the 3. And, spread them out a little differently.
That's that.
Just one other factor that just hasn't been raised yet is around high school students and the semester schedule. So for some of our high school students, when they start a class second semester, the teachers obviously are just getting to know them and getting to work with them. And so I think that's why traditionally it's been at the halfway point of each of the semesters, because students who are new to a semester-long class, the teacher gets in, gets to know them, student gets into the work, and they have something meaningful to share and time to continue to work on that before the end of the quarter. When you shift them up toward that mid-year period, you get really close to the start of that second trimester or second semester, and the teacher may not even know the student well enough to have anything meaningful to share or work with the student on at that point. So we've got to find a sweet spot there as well for the high school students.
It does seem like that the change maybe should be the end of the year conference, particularly when you talk about middle school and high school, because with the learning plan, so they can reflect on their goals, but also in the reflection on the goals, so they can look to what they're planning to do next year in terms of, if I'm taking, a higher level math class, but, this elective or whatever that is, and kind of building their schedule as well, based on what those goals look like, I would think. And that's one piece that we haven't really had kids reflect on and do, particularly in the middle school and high school. These plans have been around for a while. So, that seems like the place maybe where the change would be beneficial, where kids really have a real reflection of, this is where I was at the beginning of the year, this is where I've ended. Because then when you go back to school, when you have that first conference, it's interesting to see where they've gone from the end to the beginning of the following year, because we all know what those reading scores and literacy look like from the summer fallout.
As far as the learning plan goes, is it any kind of a milestone at the conference? Is there anything really important regarding the learning plan and the conference? Are they tied together somehow?
I can only speak as a parent, but I guess you would, so with my daughter, when she's presenting, right, and she's presenting particular goals, you want her to be able to achieve that finish line, right? And I guess what Tina's saying is that, she's setting her child might be setting a particular goal, but there's really no time to accomplish that. And my experience, at least with these student-led conferences, is it's largely on them to compile this information and deliver their own personal goals without the teacher offering a lot of insight. So when you're talking about a 12-year-old trying to set she might set something high in the sky, but have 10 days to do it, So I think.
Well, any good plan should be reviewed as you go. Are we waiting for the parent-teacher conference to pull a trigger of some kind? Or are there steps prior to that where the teacher and the student are taking a look, like, how you doing?
I don't know
Do
if
we have
they
to accelerate?
They do any type of looking at it at the school level anyway. How are you doing? Here are the goals, that you stated in November, and so in January, let's revisit it. I don't know if that happens in the school level, and it's probably on Google Classroom, but I don't know if parents really think to do that. It might be a good exercise to have them do that.
no matter what date you pick, it could be too late. If you're not tracking yourself along the way. And sometimes plans are not brought to fruition, and that's part of the learning experience. How do I make this better next time?
Maybe that's a good question. Are plans tied to conferences? Are those target points? I know like at the high school level, generally the guidance counselor is kind of reviewing those, plans with students. So, Eric?
I don't have this year's calendar memorized, so when are conferences this year?
April 6th and 7th.
Okay. So, I mean, we're talking just a week.
Yeah, it's just a week difference.
Just a week. And, I mean, I think conferences are important, at least from my experience with my kids' conferences. It's, essentially just one-on-one with the teacher, and, but I would say in regards to the calendar, whatever the administration would like to do, I think this is something that's kind of, internal. Essentially, we're only talking about a week difference. So, I mean, that's why I asked if you still supported the calendar tonight, or if you felt that going back. And
So, I mean, I support our calendar. I understand why, like what Tina and Tim have said around a shift. Tim, I guess I ask you, as you talked about, and earlier, could talk about see it to the end, but do you see that end? There's no conference to have that end, and that's why I said it went back to the third.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's what I said, that's why, when we did the student-led, you had that third, because you had the beginning of year set, the mid-year check-in, and there were periodic check-ins throughout, and then at the end, there was that, let's take a look at this, how well did we do? Because, going back to what you're saying, no matter what we put it where it's at 3 weeks earlier, it might give them more time, but at the end, is there that reflection? Because I know that with student-led conferences, that end of the year reflection really is a very important part, because that's when they look back upon, well, how well did I do? And if it may seem that may still be happening, parents may still be having that conversation with their children, one-on-one, but from a school base, I don't know if that's occurring or not.
I don't think it's occurring school-based.
Right.
But you are right, when those progress reports come back at the end of the quarters, that is the time where you kind of touch base with your own kid as a parent and say, this is what you told me at the November conference, and this is where we are at the second quarter, what do we need to do? And you have those conversations with your kid. But I don't think it's school-based wise that they have those conversations.
Right, and I think that's, something, as we are still looking at SU, we're looking, I think if we looked at it from school to school, and I think Lisa could agree, I think still there are a mixed bag in terms of what conferences may look like. Some are more traditional, where kids come in, you just, talk, it might be teachers discussing how well their students doing, giving feedback. Others might be student-led, might be a blend. But I think that's something which we have to continue to look at, is really what is the point. And maybe that's a good discussion for us, not just looking at date really, is just to go back and visit, is really, what are the point of our conferences? What are we really trying to accomplish? And that's also, I think, just involving not just the staff, but also looking at asking parents, students as well, in terms of, well, what are they looking for? I know that I've been in many conferences, and I'll be honest, that some of them I'm like, why did we come tonight? It's, what was the point of this? I'm not getting information out, and so, I wrote some good feedback, and it really varies from teacher to teacher, from year to year. But I think that, there's some good discussions that we as an admin group can have, and they can in turn have with their staff, but also involving our parents as part of this as well. That's where we look at community engagement to, and that's not just shifting a date, because I think shifting a date would just, but I don't think that's going to really look at the philosophical issue that's at stake here. I think, you made a very good point about that. I think that's why I go back to where my initial frustration more about, I'm not, it has nothing to do, it's real about philosophically, what are we trying to accomplish with that, and what do we need to do? And I think I'll publicly say, I think there's some, things we need to look at.
I mean, I think that was a question I posed the other night, like, to my wife was like what's the purpose of parent-teacher conferences? Like, are they obsolete in some fashion, like as like sales meetings can be for in like my industry, like now that we're inundated with email and immediate text and everything like that, like is it more a matter of like a teacher making those points of contact over a 30-day period? I mean, there could be a parent that you talk to twice a week, and there could be a parent that you talk to twice a year, and maybe that's the only time that they see them. But maybe it's just a different point where like, it's like, let's make it a point to make a point of contact with each parent at least once a month, or something like that,
And I'll say as a
education, so I'm not one to suggest what to do, but just
no, but I think all your perspectives are valid, because you're bringing a good philosophical discussion in terms of what you believe a conference should be, and I think that's something we need to be considering, because I think as you go up the scale, you'll see that our attendance will drop off. In high school, as a former high school teacher, I'd be lucky if I got maybe 5 parents, and typically, I'll be honest, those are 5 parents I really didn't need to see. There's a reason why those kids are doing it, because those parents take an act, like the parents I really needed to see weren't there that night, so it was kind of, outreach, but it could have been for a variety of reasons, and I think, because of, time, work, just, so I think we really have to take a look at it. I think there are some good discussions around POPs as we're starting to bring those back and make them more meaningful in our high schools, and, but I think there's some good discussions that we can continue to have, so if the board would like, Lisa and I can bring this back to the admin and, and look at some potential dates for conferences if this is what the board would like to do. But I think there's a bigger discussion around the philosophical aspect of, as Tim said, well, what's the purpose? I mean, so I think regardless of what day, I think that conversation still has to be had and involve our parents in terms of what they're looking for and what they would like to see. So I'll be honest, I think during COVID, and these kids, I think those were some of our best attended conferences because of the fact that people could call in from home and didn't have to worry about childcare or taking care of dinner or else and moving through. They could, whether it be from job or else we had a very high percentage of families who were engaged during that time, and maybe there's a lesson to be learned from there as well. So,
and I think some schools still offer conferences. Yeah, offer that option. So.
Correct.
Right, so what's the pleasure?
I had some more comments on it too, so I
Sure.
don't know if we want to just.
Oh, sure, yeah, I mean, if we're bringing it back, so might as well, whatever else you want to take a look at.
So I noticed that we took away, or you took away, at least one full day of PD, and maybe you added some more half. I was trying to double check that. So the one date that I noticed, and I think our school used it in one way, was the February 9th date that you have. I don't know, I was just curious why you went back to a half day. And the reason I was concerned is because I know that was the date that the map data was discussed. And I know that they spent at least a good part of the day understanding the data. And then I believe, at least according to our meeting in February or March when we met and went over it, that after the meeting where they learned how this, how the staff did or the students did, then they met and were able to kind of discuss next steps, right? And I'm just worried that if we cut that time to half a day, that collaboration time won't be there for them to work on that. Because I think I found it very informative that they had that time to really understand the data and make some, strides to changing, adapting to it.
So is that shared with you from staff, or?
That was shared at the meeting, at our school board meeting that we had when we discussed the map data. At least
Right,
that was the
right,
impression I got.
But the calendar was the date?
Calendar wasn't.
Right, well, I'm just saying, 'cause
I just know.
I just wonder if that was shared with you, because you were speaking as if
Oh, no, I just know
administrator or
that,
staff had shared
the
concern.
winter map testing, I remember was at the end of January. And I believe that February 9th day, I think it was the 10th this year, was used to discuss it. Because I was told that because you're discussing it then we would be able to hear about it at the meeting. So it's, again, not my call, but it's just, I feel like we took away some PD time from the teachers, and they already feel like, from what I've heard from some teachers, that they feel like they don't have as much time to collaborate as they did when they had more. At our school, they had that, hour every week for a while. And so that was a.
So they will have next year, and at least you can add on to this as well, but they will have still their 1 hour each week, which will be more school-directed. We talked about what this may look like, and I know we spoke with a few staff members at in-service about this. So they will have that time. They have 4 half-days throughout the course of the year, which is actually an additional half-day that they didn't have. And then they have 5 full days of professional development is included into having their hour each week. So I think what we have to look at is how do we utilize time more efficiently over the course of the year. And so how these discussions are at, I know that people like the 2 o'clock, 2 o'clock Tuesdays, but it was, I think we'll also look at results, across the SU. We're consistent. I know the board discussed the need to shift away, and we look at the amount of PD time that staff has. There's a lot of PD in here. I think, Lisa and I have talked, and we're shifting away from instructional coaches. We really are going to be looking at school-based, responsive professional development that administrators are going to be responsible for, provide appropriate professional development, time for collaboration in their schools, as opposed to relying upon a district or an SU group to lead that PD. So there is a lot, I think, where at this time next year we can take a look at and see if the impacts of this and if whether or not we like to shift. But I just and Lisa I think we have an ample amount of professional development. But like I said, it goes back to how well and how effectively administrators use that time. I think there are times, and Lisa and I discuss all the time about how many meetings can be reduced to a memo. And as we're wasting time, I should say wasting time, but if we're spending time in meetings, but can those, some of these items be reduced to a memo, and then we allow for more time for collaboration and for group work, things like that. So Lisa, anything you want to add, particularly around that February 9th date?
So this February, Tina, that February has traditionally, in the last 2 years, it's been our day-to-day, where we really have taken a deep dive into mid-year data and given staff time to work on that. And this past February, we did building-based sessions where principals were able to meet with their building teams and do a data review in the morning. It was about 2 hours long, and 2.5 maybe, and they had a lot of time to do that. And then we had a lot of other in-service sessions, some of which were about using that data to plan. Others were about, other topics related to our MTSS rollout. And then at the end of the day, we gave schools some additional time for teachers to come back after reflecting on the data, having the day to think about it more, and gave teams time to kind of wrap up or do next steps or whatever they needed to do. And many of our principals reported that they didn't even need that time for that, they felt like they got their conversation to a good place in the morning, and they were ready to take it back to their school building during a weekly meeting and move to next steps. And so based on that feedback, we really felt like the half day in February, where they're just already in their building and they don't have to travel or anything, they can just go right into that same kind of school-based data meeting, would be efficient and effective for folks and give them the time that they needed. And then time at that end of the year, which is where the shift happens, would give people time to really take everything that they've learned over the course of the whole school year, review their final end of year outcomes, curriculum, and make the kind of planning. They can start planning in June for the things that need to be rolled out, or if there are things they want to introduce to staff or train staff in, they have time to do that. And to us at the time, it felt like that was a reasonable trade-off, to still have that built-in time for buildings, but to also give them a little bit of time to really launch themselves for success for the following school year. Everything's a trade-off, right?
But you didn't add any more to the end of the year, right?
We have a full day professional development on the
But
14th.
you have that on this year too, right?
No, we didn't.
No. We have.
Oh, you didn't have any PD.
No. So we have
Okay.
a full day PD at the end of the year.
Okay, so
We
you,
have an
I
additional
missed that.
half-day of professional development in next year's calendar, and we made that shift for February and June, and a half-day in February and a full day in June.
And then is some of the PD time also going to be working on the strategic plan? Because that's starting this year too, in addition to the normal.
Yes. Yes, we'll be, it is going to be a shift for our administration, because I think, over the past couple of years, that there has been a heavy reliance upon our, Lisa and the instructional coaches to set up professional development for, school and district and SU. I think, as the admins are, I think for the most part excited about having more control over professional development, but it will be, responsive to school-based needs, but also district and SU. So therefore, the strategic plan, it will impact each one of our schools differently. And so we'll, as Lisa and I look at approving professional development plans, so like Rutland Town, Middletown, Springs, Wells Village, we'll all have to have a professional development plan, and we will go through, we'll talk about linking to goals, whether it be strategic plans, school-based goals, district goals. We'll look for links for this, and so there'll be areas of emphasis. But like I said, there is a amount of time for building administrators to really look at, because, we look at academic achievement. An area of emphasis in one school might be a little bit different for another school, so therefore they have to be responsive and set up professional development that's appropriate for those schools and those kids. And also we have to look at differentiating that even within a building, that we can't have the one-stop shop. We have to look at, some staff might need this training, others might need this training, so a building administrator is more qualified to work with that than say, Lisa or I, so. But it will be linked to school and district and SU goals, which is outlined in the strategic plan.
And I think my last comment about.
And just real quick, we will be also sharing professional development with the boards too, for them to look at. So that would come to, before the boards, probably in August, at the August board meetings.
So when I saw the conferences, and that led me to look at other calendars, I came across a few calendars that had designated holidays that it was more of a like equity and inclusion type of idea. It wasn't a holiday off for school for students, but it was if the student, say they were Jewish and they wanted to spend Yom Kippur with family and at the synagogue, that they wouldn't have to worry that any tests or big projects or, once a year activities would be given on those days. They were designated by like a star or something, and that they would be more or less excused if that was why they were out. But it wouldn't be a holiday for the school.
Well, so if a student has, say, religious holiday, it is an excused absence. I think what you're talking about, something which Lisa, myself, and the admins can really take a look at, is really be mindful of those dates. And as we're working with staff, in the fall, and just saying like, hey, around Yom Kippur or Rosh Hashanah, let's say that let's not plan a field trip on this date, and let's kind of work around these dates. Like these are kind of just because those individuals may not be able to partake in that activity. So those are things which we could.
I just thought it was really nice, and I know
that
that we're moving towards equity.
It's a very good idea. I think that's something which we can internally do and set that up. I know when we look at assessment calendars, be sensitive to that as well, and we just with our own calendar. But that's a good idea.
Okay. So what is the prerogative of the board with the calendar in front of them?
I like to make a motion that they go back and talk about the student conferences in the spring and what the philosophy is, and if that still aligns with having it that late, then that's okay. If not, maybe moving it earlier so students have a little bit more time, given a lot of the assessments, to work on their goals before the end of the year.
Could I just make a recommendation that we would just look at all conference dates? Because I think if we're going to look at dates, I think we should look at both sets of dates, not just one. Because if we're making a shift to one, and we should make it a shift to both then, so.
That'd be great.
Okay, so the motion is to send the calendar back to,
We need a motion on this? Do we need a motion on this?
No, you can just direct us.
Okay.
okay. You would like a motion? Okay. To look at, so the motion is to look at all conference dates and send the calendar back to the superintendent and building admin and instructors.
And I would also add and consider the designated holidays as for equity and inclusion.
That would be internal, that would not be marked on this, so that's just something which we would.
Yeah.
so.
Okay.
And that's
Well,
something
well,
which
some
we could
of,
provide.
some of them actually had them marked. It was interesting. It was just
I think as we look at, right, I understand that, but
so that
we're
teachers
not
knew
marking all
which days.
holidays, we're just looking at, yeah.
Right, no, it was like an attachment to the calendar. It
So,
was-
so what staff are provided was like an assessment calendar, and I think as, we can look at how we can provide the information to staff. Following days, just be mindful, just be aware of, just, avoid any sort of assessment or summative on this day or field trip or whatever else. That's something which we can do internally and work with our admin and get that out to our staff, whether it be this year, before they break for the summer as they're starting to plan, or either the fall. So we can do that
Okay.
internally.
Thank you.
I just don't want the calendar to be so convoluted with
No.
dates.
Yeah, well, then
I
it
hear
gets
ya.
difficult for everyone to look at. So the motion is to send the calendar back to the superintendent, building admin, and instructors to look at all conference dates for the 2023-2024 school year. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes by majority. With respect to snow days, just so we don't jinx ourselves with the upcoming storm, we'll talk about that in April. And we have a need for executive session for personnel and contracts. So a motion would be in order to move into oh, I'm sorry.
Session, are we going to cover the next meeting date?
Oh.
Agendas?
So the next meeting date is April 4th, yeah. And, yeah, all future agenda items as prior should be directed to Chris or Christine.
Okay, well, I wasn't sure if we could do that now, because I just, there were a couple things I was hoping we could put on the agenda and talk about.
Okay,
One of them being transportation,
sure.
and then the other one being the superintendent evaluation.
Okay. Do you want to give us a little more, what that,
So,
Well, yeah, with the superintendent evaluation, last fall when we did it, we talked about
right.
bringing it to the board and talk about having the full board
yeah,
and then member districts participate in this process. So I think that discussion begins here.
okay, so you just wanted to discuss the process.
Yeah.
Okay.
And how the board would like to.
Sure,
To do it,
okay.
because it's a board decision.
Yep,
And
that's
then-
fine.
Bylaws too, it's in the bylaws as well.
What's that?
It's in the bylaws as well, so you
Yeah.
have to review bylaws.
Yeah, I just would rather do it sooner than.
Okay, that's fine. I'm just, when you say it, I'm just like, what does that mean that we're talking about? Okay.
Well, without getting into like a big discussion.
No, that's fine. So just discussing just so everybody has information in front of them that they need. And transportation, Chris
Yeah.
knows what that's,
No, I haven't, I'm just bringing this up, I mean, like,
Okay.
as far as like agenda items but as far as like transportation go, I know transportation's gonna be up for bid, next year,
Yes.
correct? And that, there's something I wanted to bring up about that around budgeting, so.
okay. Okay. All right. Does anybody else have anything they want to toss to the agenda right now?
Last meeting, policy H2 was supposed to be on, so I just want to make sure that gets on to the April meeting.
Right. And so we didn't do any policies because during reorg, we decided that we would wait and do all policies when we start our new schedule here in April. So,
All that'll be on April.
yeah, so all the
Well, we're meeting April 4th.
Who is?
We are.
Yeah.
So,
So So all
So
those
is the policy
policies
committee?
will be here, except H2 has already come to the SU board, so it'll be a first read in April.
So in our understanding is that policies will go to the SU board and then,
Right.
right, so
So
that's
if-
why we did not do it this month.
Correct. But at the last SU meeting, the motion was to bring it back to the SU board as a first read at our March meeting.
The H2.
The
one,
H2.
it's the facility ones.
Yeah, I know at H2.
Okay.
Yeah, my understanding on that was that the SU board made a motion to approve that policy for a first read. So that would be a first read. So it's already been a first.
I don't think that's what the minute said.
Well, that's fine. I mean, if the SU board wants to look at it again, it's,
Yeah, I don't
but
know
that
that.
was my intent with the motion, was that the SU board.
Maybe
could
that is what she meant.
approve it,
Yeah.
and then it would be a first read for the member districts, and that would be the first one. But with all the reorganization and everything's just kind of, there's a gap, March is a gap
Yeah.
in this process.
Okay.
Well, right, and you need to see when we were gonna meet as an SU so you can do
So it's
your.
the April local meetings.
Yes. Yep. And then the February policies that were done at the policy committee meeting, those will come here in April, so it's all kind of lined out in my head, you know, and the work plan that I have, so, but, yeah, and then if I can,
Yeah.
one more thing that's not agenda related,
Yeah.
just as kind of like an FYI. So, and I didn't know when or where to talk about this, but I'll just spit it out really quick. So, the State Board of Education will be taking public comment on April 4th and 6th on draft governance standards for school boards, if you're not aware of this. I just wanted to throw it out there that the governance standards will affect basically how boards do their work in certain ways, and there's some accountability pieces. And if everyone likes, I can email the draft rules, and because there's a lot in there, it's about 10 pages worth of stuff. But I would encourage board members to read through, and if you have, opinions on it, I think that would be a good time to do it. Yeah, April 4th and April 6th, and there are virtual meetings too. So I just wanted to throw that out
You
there.
can't submit comments to this one, just sending the comments in like we could before? You have to attend the meeting?
No, you can,
Yeah.
can send public comment in too, yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah. But, even then, if you didn't want to, and you just wanted to listen in. it's-
Yep.
Can you send it?
What's that?
Can you send it, please?
Yeah, I can send it to everyone.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? All right, motion would be in order to enter executive session for personnel and contracts. It's 7:49, but let's say 8 o'clock, so we can have a chance to clean up here and everybody else have opportunity for the other link. Is that okay?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mike. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Aye.